In an era marked by rapid advancements and expanding horizons in space exploration, the insights of astronauts like Charles Kemmer, who have journeyed beyond our planet's atmosphere, carry invaluable wisdom. As NASA's major missions right now are to go back to the moon with the Artemis program and to explore Mars, Charles Kemmer shared his views on space development with Thai PBS World. So this has been the conversation on social media that we've been there on the moon since like decades before, since the Cold War,
Sure.
right? So, but it's been decades, but why we're still at the moon? Why
Sure.
we don't go further than that? It's been decades already.
Yeah, no, I think that's a mystery to all of us, except that, you know, when I was a kid
Yeah.
in the 60s and 70s growing
Yeah.
up, I mean, I always say that the promise of the 60s was that we would take $1 worth of raw material, take it to space, and create $1 million worth of value added, right?
Yeah.
That was the dream, that was the hope. Well, it turns out that's much more difficult than that, right? It's a much
Yeah.
more difficult environment to get to work in, and you have to have the national resolve. I mean, it's you know, I don't know what the right word to describe it, but for sure a pity that, you know, we had 3 space qualified
Yep.
Apollo spacecraft that we didn't fly because we didn't fund it. You know, we canceled the programs.
I see.
And so part of it is always national resolve. What, you know, how do you spend and compete for those dollars, right? And no bucks, no Buck Rogers.
What's going on right now about the space development?
Probably the biggest development is commercial space, right?
Yeah.
And of course that releases NASA to go do our exploration mission. So return to moon, on to Mars. That's where the NASA concentration is right now.
Yeah.
The rest of the access to space, resupply, satellite delivery, space station operations, all of those things will eventually be transferred to commercial space. And so, and I think that's a good move. You know, the job of governments, in my mind, is to provide that seed money that gets the industry going. But industry has to at some point pick up the ball and run.
Yeah.
Right? And so you're starting to see that now. It literally took 60 years for that to develop, but we're there now. And so I look forward to just seeing that continue on, but in a bigger way.
So how about the Mars plantation right now?
Well, we're a few years away from that. You know,
A few years away.
well, a few decades probably.
decades.
Yeah, more like decades. But no, you know, could that happen? Will that happen in the future? It's certainly possible. I mean, but again, those challenges are significant, right?
Yeah.
And you know, when people talk about things like terraforming Mars, and we're probably centuries away from technologies or the operations that would be potentially understood and necessary to do that. As a matter of fact, it's beyond my comprehension today. But could that be solved in the future?
We don't know.
We don't know,
Right.
right? We don't know, but you're going to see people try for sure.
But from your perspective, you think it's possible or not? How many percent?
It's a challenge. I mean, because you know, again, the atmosphere. I mean, we think maybe at one time Mars had an atmosphere that supported life, but for some reason or other it was stripped away. So there's some unique challenges there, not the least of which is gravity, right? Just the gravitational field, the storms on the planet that possibly, quite possibly, have stripped away the atmosphere over time, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, even studying our own planet, studying Mars, trying to understand maybe what took place, you know, in our geologic history and past, gives us some understanding about what we need to do to protect our own planet today.
Yeah. So about the space development, so what do you see that it's the most challenging issue for the space development today?
Cost.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, governments are stressed, you know, to provide services for your citizens, and you know, there's a lot of competing interests there.
Yeah.
And so we're all competing for the same dollars. And so I think that's That's the biggest competition out there, and the biggest challenge is to come up with the funding to support these programs. Now, and put it in perspective.
Yeah.
So this year, the gross domestic product for the United States is $31 trillion.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's $31 billion.
I thought is that, wow.
Right?
Yeah, billion thousand.
Billion thousand.
Wow.
So of that, NASA's budget is about 31 billion. So that whole gross domestic product of $31,000 billion, and our budget is about 31 billion. So, the question becomes, again, how do you spend your dollars?
Yeah.
Is this worth it? I maintain that yes, that return on investment is significant and benefits society in a number of ways. And the truth of the matter is, I think as the strongest economy in the world, we have an obligation to support these programs. I don't think it's even an option. I think that becomes an obligation. There's a lot of nations that can't do this, right? They don't have the resources to fund those programs.
So you're here in Thailand for the Skill Up project.
Correct.
For talking about the STEM educational system.
Yes.
So how do you find STEM important for the educational system nowadays?
Sure. Well, again, when you start talking about STEM education, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, everything we touch starts with STEM. The jacket, the chair, the cameras, the lights, the screen.
How?
Well, it started as an idea in somebody's head, but that idea had to be transferred either to a design, to a computer, right? And then through that had to be, evaluated, manufactured, transported, and eventually to a point of sale and showed up in the studio here. But all of those were STEM-related occupations. The engineers that designed it, right? The transportation specialists that built the networks to get it here, the roads, the railroads, the airplanes, all of those things. Everything that we touch in our daily life gets its start in STEM: science, technology, engineering, mathematics. So I say, so part of what we're doing trying to do here with the Skill Up program and Skill Up platform is to bring those STEM skills to students across Asia, starting with Thailand.
So talking about yourself, how do you use STEM skill in your career?
Oh, sure, yeah.
How?
Well, as a pilot, as an engineer, as an astronaut, as a test pilot, everything I did every day was STEM related.
STEM.
When we go out here and test, let's just talk about, NASA, for example. All of these programs are highly technologically complex. The spacecraft is a technologically complex vehicle. And there's kind of two ways to think about it. You can either teach people how to run it or how to work it, or teach people how it works. Well, as an astronaut, you kind of have to understand both of those. You have to understand how it works as well as how to work it. And as an engineering test pilot, the same thing.
Gitipat Chun Sukjit, reporting for Thai PBS World.